My first stop in education was Inglewood, California. In 1993, I walked into a middle school classroom in the Inglewood Unified School District. I was assigned to 7th and 8th grade science at Crozier Middle School. The facilities consisted of dilapidated buildings, classrooms with no air conditioning, old fashioned chalkboards coated in dust, and gang rivalries settling themselves in the campus courtyard. I was barely older than some of my students, and I survived it. I survived a year round calendar and a multi track system intended to accommodate the severe overcrowding schools were experiencing at that time. This is what I built my career on 30 plus years of it. And then this school year happened. 30 years into teaching, and 2026 is the year that finally broke me. This is the year I understood. Really, really understood in my body, down deep in my soul, what burnout means. Not as a concept, but as an actual condition. I'm starting this podcast because I have things to say that I haven't been able to say inside a school building about the system, about what it does to teachers, about what it is currently doing to students, and about a generation I'm watching struggle in ways that are new, troubling, and largely out of their control. This generation of students has changed fundamentally. Many have learned the scorched earth method of getting what they want, forcing the system to bend to their will instead of building resilience. This is Class Dismissed, and I'm your host, Allen Shelton. And I've been in the classroom long enough to know the difference between a rough year and a reckoning. This year has been a reckoning. Sit back and let me tell you about it.
And as you can see, the quadratic formula is essential for understanding these equations. Are we all following along? Please pay attention. This is important for your exams.
My career is a story of contrast. So to understand where I'm at, you have to understand where I started. Because the contrast is the whole story. Inglewood, California, 1993. I did not choose teaching. It was what happened when other plans that I had made didn't pan out. I wanted to be a doctor, a professor, something with more appeal, more prestige. Teaching middle school science in South LA was just not something that I ever dreamed of doing. But at the same time, it was the only door open to me. I walked through it, underprepared, let's be honest, uncertain, and a little bit embarrassed, to be honest with you. Some part of me was still insisting this was a temporary situation. I treated it like Peace Corps. I'll do this for a couple years and then I'm going to move on. I'm going to go do something else. As I mentioned earlier, the school had no air conditioning. September in Southern California means serious heat, and we taught in it. Sweaty, 30 plus kids crammed into a room, closed in, restless, hot, and expected to care about things that they didn't normally care about. Photosynthesis, mathematics, whatever it was. The chalkboards were relics. I carried the physical residue of chalk dust on my clothing, on my skin, each and every day, even to the point where I started to feel like I was developing asthma. This was post-uprising Los Angeles. Gang culture was not a distant abstraction. It was real. It walked into my room every morning. Some of my 8th graders were 15. I was just 23. I was not much older than them. And there was a particular kind of measuring up that happened in those early weeks. Students silently negotiating who I was going to be in that room. I hadn't earned the right to be there yet, but I had to earn it in real time. This school year, I inherited a classroom of students who had survived COVID. I want to be precise about the word survive. The lockdowns and isolation changed them fundamentally. The kids sitting in front of me don't have the same toolkit as students from decades past. They've become adept at navigating environments where challenges are easily sidestepped. Let me describe a typical morning. A student walks in with a bag of hot Cheetos, Funyuns, or something like that, and Powerade. This is not breakfast, or rather, it is their breakfast. A bright red, artificially flavored, nutritionally empty breakfast that has become something close to a cultural identity for this generation. It's not just food, it's a lifestyle. Gaming culture dominates their lives, immediate feedback, constant stimulation, a reset button when things get hard. And when my classroom doesn't operate on those terms, the dissonance is sharp. Sustained attention has become a genuine challenge. Many lack the muscle for focus that previous generations brought with them simply by virtue of their upbringing. COVID took those formative years, and now they are in my room, looking at me as if I've asked them to climb a mountain. The use of language is a critical concern. Students drop expletives without even registering they've done it. For them, it's filler, ambient noise. They've not absorbed any understanding of context or the different registers of language that exist. We're dealing with a developmental gap that now falls on the teachers to address. And respect? Forget about it. Many demand it without understanding that it's a two-way street. I've spent 30 years earning authority through consistency and genuine care. Yet this year, I'm experiencing something all too familiar. The exhaustion of someone who has poured his heart into the work only to see it bounce off a wall of disengagement. Let me illustrate what I mean. Over the years, I've established a sense of classroom decorum. No eating in the class, no drinking, no gum, no profanity. I believe hard in the growth mindset. So I preach a mantra of attitude over aptitude. Dream big, work hard. I refuse to spoon feed answers, instead encouraging students to find solutions themselves. Letting students fall and bump their heads. Many resented that. And right from the start, I found myself under scrutiny. Being forced to fend off a series of erroneous and sometimes malicious reports. The first report I had against me was for me using the legal term illegal alien during a discussion meant to motivate students to consider reforms regarding our immigration laws here in this country. The students perceived me as being a racist. They reported me as saying that they were illegal immigrants and should go back to Mexico. Then I got another report against me. I was accused of being a Charlie Kirk supporter after students asked me what I thought of his death. The only thing I could respond at that time was that no one should be killed for their views, right? That is the whole point of free speech. But some kids interpreted that as me pushing a Charlie Kirk agenda and reported me. Of course, I was called into the office for it. I was reprimanded for it. And then I got another report. These things just kept falling. They just kept falling. I was reported for asking a female student who was wearing an inappropriately revealing Harley Quinn costume to cover up after seeing her walk around with her breasts protruding out the top. This is an 8th grader with her cleavage busting up out the top of her costume. And I just said, hey, can you cover that? As quietly as I could. She felt offended, felt objectified, and reported me for a sexually inappropriate statement. Each time I was assured I hadn't truly done anything wrong, but was nonetheless disciplined for offending the student. And the reports kept coming. There were others after that. And eventually I was written up. I was even placed on administrative leave. Every report robbed me of more and more of the motivation that kept me going. the motivation I needed for the work I was supposed to be doing, right? Finally, it just became too hard for me to care. I found myself becoming demotivated, struggling to connect with students who, instead of learning resilience, have figured out how to manipulate the system to serve their needs. Shame on the school and the system that did not defend me, or better, didn't defend itself. They let the kids think this is the way to handle a problem. So, what does burnout feel like after 30 years? It feels like silence, not dramatic or a breakdown, but a quieting of the spirit, the place where enthusiasm used to reside. I stopped looking forward to lessons. I started watching the clock and felt the dread creeping back in. The resentment I felt scared me, not toward any individual student, but a generalized disappointment in the chasm between my effort and what was being received. It was directed at the system that was failing to properly educate our students. It's hard to reconcile knowing that students are products of circumstance larger than themselves with the emotional fatigue that comes from relentlessly trying to reach them, right? This is compassion fatigue. It's exhausting. Oh, your empathy without any replenishment. I've watched colleagues walk away from teaching because of this. Their passion dissipated, dismissed as a personal failure. But this year has shown me it isn't just an individual crisis. It is a fallout of a flawed system asking us to give without end and not supplying us with the tools, the resources, the support to be able to do it. I want to connect what I've experienced this year to something larger. This podcast isn't merely a memoir. The behaviors I described, the gaming culture, the consumption of Cheetos, the casual profanity, are not the problem. They're symptoms of systematic issues. Adults, institutions, and cultures made these decisions, and kids are bearing the weight of it. We kept children in isolation, replaced in-person education with screens, advanced them regardless of mastery, and built policies avoiding discomfort rather than fostering resilience. We handed them back to teachers, scarred up, beat up, but expected to learn. Without any support, without resources, we've decided as a system not to let students encounter the very things that would serve them: honest difficulty and the consequences of their actions. We've neglected to give teachers what they need for long-term survival. We threaten students with failure, but we never deliver. We threaten students with low grades, but we never deliver. We find a way to pass them along because we don't want that they be hurt emotionally. And so this falls back on the teachers who feel defeated, who feel that they have no real power over what they're doing in their classrooms because they know that they have to pass these kids, right? And when you don't pass the kid, it's on you to justify why that student is not passing your class, right? Whereas before, if a kid didn't do their work, you notified the parent discussed it with the child was dealt with, and things hopefully improved. Today, you can call the parent, you can tell the parent, you can do everything within your power, but still, you're not failing that kid. The burnout I've faced is happening across classrooms nationwide, and it's only going to worsen until we acknowledge that what happens inside a school building really matters. 30 years in a classroom gives a person a lot of time to think about what education really is. It's not the test scores, it's not the policies, and it's certainly not the paperwork. It's the moment when a kid realizes they're capable of something they didn't believe about themselves 5 minutes earlier. I've seen that moment thousands of times. I've seen that light switch flip on. And when it happens, there's nothing like it. That's the part of teaching people don't understand when they talk about burnout. Teachers don't burn out because they stop caring. They burn out because they cared for too long inside a system that stopped protecting the work. For 3 decades, I showed up, hot classrooms, gang tensions, policy shifts, testing waves, a pandemic generation. Through all of it, I believed the classroom still mattered. But this year forced me to face something I didn't want to admit. The system has changed. It's changed, ladies and gentlemen. It's changed, folks, in ways that make the work almost impossible to do the way it needs to be done. So yes, this episode is called 30 Years In, but it's also something else. It's a closing chapter. 2026 is the end of my time in the classroom. 30 years of lesson plans, 30 years of students, 30 years of trying to convince young people that effort still matters. I'm proud of that work, but I'm not done talking about what I've seen. Because if we want education to survive the next 30 years, we're going to have to start telling the truth, people, about what's happening inside our schools, what's happening in the educational system in general. That's what this podcast is about. This is Class Dismissed. I'm Allen Shelton, and until next time, class is dismissed.